Welcome to the Hopefulist with me, Wendy McClure. A Hopefulist is the woman who takes control of her life to feel vibrant, alive, and passionate. I help uncover the limiting beliefs that have held women back for so long so you can step into your true, authentic self and live the life that is truly meant for you. Because you matter. Thank you for joining me today. I appreciate you being here. Thank you so much for taking the time to work on yourself because you matter. Today's a very special edition. We have a guest. We have Kay Kirkman. She is a dream job mentor. Kay, welcome to the show.
Wendy, thank you. Thank
Oh.
you so much for having me. I've been looking forward to this all day.
Oh, well, that's nice to hear.
Yes,
So
yes.
tell me, what is a dream job mentor?
Wow. So I help Gen X professionals discover their career passion, even if they think that it's too late or they're too old to start something new.
Well, we are Gen
So,
X. I mean, we're
yeah.
old, right?
Yeah, yeah. We're not that old, Wendy. Yeah. But no, you're right. It's real. We were talking a little bit before we got on about the fact that old until I turned 53,
No.
and then all of a sudden, for some reason, the age thing really started to stick with me. But, they always say you teach what you most need to learn. So I feel like maybe life is pushing me in that direction to teach others and be that mentor for others that are really looking to tap into their dream, even though half our life is kind of over, right?
Probably
But I'm the
a
one
little bit more, probably, but we won't go there.
over half, right? I know, unless we live to be over
A
100.
100 and something,
Yeah,
yes.
that's true.
I can't
We've got
afford
more.
that.
You said you can't afford that. Exactly. But yeah, maybe I'm being called to be this mentor for others to keep reminding myself that no, it's not too late. And we can always, as long as we're alive, Wendy, as long as we're alive and kind of moving around a little bit,
Yes.
we can still go after what we want. And who wants to stay? We were talking about working from home
Yeah.
like earlier. Who wants to stay in a job that they absolutely hate for the next, I don't know, 10, 15, 20, however many years you're working? Why not? The time's going to pass anyway.
Yeah,
So why not do
absolutely.
something that you enjoy? So
So,
that's what I do.
okay, so somebody comes to you, say they just lost a job, and they're like, you know what, I've been in this field for 20 years. I hate it. What does the process look like when you first have somebody come to you?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the first thing I always do is I have them suspend reality just momentarily, and I have them think about what is your vision for your ideal career. So if there were no limits, if you knew you couldn't fail, what would you do? And a lot of times the first thing I get is blank stares, but what I usually do is I set a timer, even just for a minute, usually it's a minute to 5 minutes, and they just have to free write. Like, just write stuff down on a piece of paper. What would you do if you knew you couldn't fail and if there were no limits? Like, what's your ultimate dream in terms of a career?
I would
And
want to be Kelly on Live with Kelly and Ryan.
really, tell me more about this.
Right?
Why?
Do you
Just to,
can you hook me up?
oh, I wish, we
See,
could be the dynamic duo.
that's my
Ebony
problem.
and Ivory.
I know exactly what I want. It's just a matter of getting that, right?
Exactly.
Especially now that we're in our 50s.
Yeah, exactly. What so this is what we do. So we start there, right? We
Okay.
start with the big vision, but then we start to dial it back some and we say, okay, so what could be your version of being Kelly, right? What could be your version?
Hmm.
What could you do?
I could have my own podcast.
Hello, hello. Exactly, right? So I am very creative. And so when I sit down with my clients, I mean, I just have so many ideas of how they could live out that dream in a way that maybe they didn't expect or they didn't even realize was possible. With the internet now, I mean, now this might be a bold statement, but I just feel like anything's possible. Like you
Mhm.
can literally create anything. You could go on YouTube with a bucket of slime and you could show people how to make slime.
Yeah.
There are legit people doing that,
Well, a friend of
right?
mine had said one time, I said, I was trying to guide her into, she spends a lot of time taking care of her mother. And we were talking about a time where, she wouldn't be doing that anymore. And I said, well, what do you like to do? She goes, nothing. I just literally like to sit around and watch TV. I'm like, you can become an influencer on Instagram
Hello.
or something like that, talking about and giving recaps of your favorite shows.
Absolutely. You certainly could do that. I mean, there are so many blogs, Instagram accounts,
Mm-hmm.
YouTube channels that's all they do. And some of them you don't even have to, like if you're worried about your wrinkles or how you look, some of them you don't even have to show your face. With podcasting, you don't have to show your face. I mean, now they have all these video podcasts and stuff, but you don't have to do that.
Right. But
Like you
even if
could.
you do, we were
Mhm.
mentioning, even here on the Zoom screen, I said, I,
All
I,
right.
I hit that little filter button when they asked me, and I was like,
Filters are making us look,
it looks,
yeah,
I
like
look
we need.
pretty.
Exactly.
Which is a
So,
little
right.
scary, Kay, because that's why real life is a little scarier now than it used to be, because there's
Yeah, yeah.
there's no filters in real life.
I know. There are no filter. Well, there's Botox and Restylane.
I don't
That's our
know.
filter.
Even with that, like there is a woman that I follow on TikTok, and she is unbelievably gorgeous. I mean, she just has like the smoothest skin and the perfect makeup and the hair. And she actually put up a clip of her recording a podcast as a guest. She looked
Ah,
50% different.
what, like worse?
Yes. Well, that's what I mean. Like you've so many options now for all these
Yeah.
filters. And
There's a lot. Because there used to just be what, like Facetune was
yes.
like the main one. But now, to your point, on Zoom, we have filters.
Mm-hmm.
Instagram is out
I
insane. I mean,
know.
they've got like the filters. So yeah, I always say, if it makes you feel good, do it. You know what I mean? But then to your point, when you get to see somebody in real life, you don't want people to be like, "Ah, like who is that?" You know
Right.
what I mean?
I, I,
So
I do some videos for some platforms, and I don't want to meet somebody in real life and have them be like, oh,
but yeah.
I'd rather it be the reverse. I want you,
Right.
maybe I should ugly myself up a little
Yeah,
bit.
ugly
And
yourself
then when
down.
you meet me in person, you're like, wow, she really is pretty.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. No, it's a thing. I mean, I'm not gonna lie. It's definitely a thing. But hey, it's one of the pleasures of growing older.
Oh, it's well, they say it's a privilege, right? We have to
Yeah,
remember that it is a privilege to grow older.
that's true.
Speaking of growing older,
Yeah.
is that something that you hear often when it comes to, somebody getting into a certain field or
Yeah.
something that, I don't know. Do people worry about the time that it takes to build up a good career? Like, say it was like a real estate agent or something, where it can take years for you to actually
Yeah.
start making good money.
Yeah. It's funny. And I know you weren't you were just using that as an example, but real estate is actually a very good career to get into when you're older because you know a lot of people. You know what I
Mm,
mean? Like that warm market is huge. And real estate is something that everyone on some level needs to be involved in. Like everybody needs some place to live.
mm.
So, but that's just an aside. But to your point, yes, that is a big concern that people often come to me with is like, I'm 53, I'm 54. I can't start this now because it's going to take, blah 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 time. Which I mean, I'm not like airy fairy like, in pie in the sky like that's not
It's all
true.
going to work
It's
out.
all gonna just smile, keep smiling. And I do say that, but but I think that first of all, there are certain occupations where your age is actually an asset. So there are certain occupations, excuse me, where people want that knowledge, that maturity, that level of life that you've lived, things of that nature. So first of all, there is that, right? There are
Mm-hmm.
certain professions like, I'm a coach. For coaching, the fact that I'm coaching other Gen X professionals is actually an asset for me. because I can relate to the stage of life that they're in,
Hmm.
And so when we're talking, they're not talking to, no offense to my 20-year-olds if they're listening, or, 30-year-olds, but the life experience and what we're going through day to day is so much different. So it's an asset. So there is that. Some occupations, your age is actually an asset. The other thing is, and I said this earlier, the time is going to pass anyway. So if you're thinking that you don't want to do a certain profession because it's going to take, even if it takes 10 years and you're 63, I mean, yes, that's older, but you're still, I mean, I know 63-year-olds who are up and kicking, traveling, doing things. I mean, you're not in the in the
I
grave
hope
yet,
not.
but
That's only 10 years away.
I was gonna say we're gonna still vibrant, in our 62, 63-year-old way. So I think that when people say I'm too old and it's going to take too long, especially if they're in their 50s, they're in their 60s, I would venture to say, pushing it a little, but even in your 70s, let's say you have 10 years. I have an 82-year-old aunt who is still traveling, driving, living on her own. No son. She's on Facebook. She texts me with emojis. So it's just, I feel like people haven't really sat down and thought it through a lot of times when they say I'm too old. Because if they break it down, and that's what I do, I agitate your beliefs.
Mm.
And I say, well, let's sit down and let's talk about this a little more. Like, you just want to say flippantly, oh, I'm too old. Well, wait a minute. So it's going to take you 5 years to study, or it's going to take you 4 years to study this. Okay. Then it's going to take you 2 years. Okay. So you'll be 58. 58. I mean, you still have a lot of life left.
Yeah.
You don't have as much when you were 20, but,
Well,
that's what happens
and
when you live.
part of the problem, I think, for a lot of women, especially from our generation, is we were raised to be mothers, to
Yeah.
be wives, and we hadn't been encouraged to think about
Mhm.
what we were passionate about when it came to our careers. So, for somebody who's never even thought about a, a passion, people that are
Yeah.
just getting a job to pay the bills, how do you get people started about focusing on their passion? I know that you said that you had them right in the beginning.
Yeah.
Um, but what is it that, how do you encourage them to, I don't, even the fact that they are worthy of going after something that they're passionate about?
Yeah. That's such a great question. I started out by saying that I start with the vision. The next thing we do is we talk about action steps so that I have them take a small micro action step, which starts to increase the belief. So when they actually take an action step and they see some, even if it's a small measure of progress, that, believe it or not, starts that belief engine going. And what was at first seemingly not possible, there's a little crack of a window that opens in the belief. After they take the action step, the next part of the process is mindset. And that's what you're talking about.
Well, can you give me a couple of examples of the first action that you're talking about?
Yeah. So it could be as simple as, I want to be a travel agent. I've always loved travel and I love helping my family to plan travel. So that's what I want to do. That's my passion. Okay. So let's Google how to become a travel agent and see what comes up. And oftentimes there'll be a bunch of search results. And you know how it is with Google, how you start going down that rabbit hole with Google, that you find one search result that leads to something that leads to something. And a half an hour later, they're excited because they've hit upon something, a course, a class, a podcast, something that actually is telling them that they could do it. So that's an example of a step that someone can take and how they could actually start to see that possibility. But there is some mindset work. They have to start believing. And I think that's kind of what you were speaking to. And the action steps kind of help them with the belief. But
And then what do you do to help them work on the mindset then once they start to get a little bit of confidence?
yeah, so that's when I really start challenging and agitating the beliefs. And so if they tell me, well, I've never even thought about my passion, and that's not how I grew up, kind of what you were talking about, I'll start asking questions like, why is that? Like, why do you think that is? And sometimes I'll get answers that go back to their parents, or even it could be as simple as somebody told them that they couldn't do something
Ugh.
when they were in college or when they were. So it's interesting where it goes. But really, that mindset piece is about challenging the beliefs and getting into the root of what is stopping you, what's really stopping you. Because when you talk to me about practical things that are stopping you, I can challenge it because I could show you examples of people that have done exactly what you're saying you can't do. So let's get into what is the belief or why? Why do you think you can't do that? And so that's part of what the mindset work ends up being is why? What's stopping you? That's the question that I ask a lot of times.
I seem to struggle with personally is I have a production problem. I get distracted and
Mhm.
I have a whole list of things that I want to do, that I plan to do, and I
Yes.
never do.
Yes.
Now, I listen to some people and they tell me I have an issue with my identity, that
Mm.
I am not
Yeah.
identifying as somebody who has a successful podcast, as somebody who is a
Mhm.
coach that can help people better their lives. What
Mhm.
do you think about that?
Yeah, that's such a that you got some good questions here, Wendy. I love the questions. I love the questions. It reminds me, have you ever heard of that book Atomic Habit?
I sure
James
do. Got it on my
Clear.
bookshelf.
So he talks about that identity thing, and he talks about how it's like you've got to go from being someone who doesn't smoke from that to a non-smoker.
Okay.
Right? So that's different. It's like you actually become that thing that you want to be. And I think what he talked about in the book is just making it easy to do. Like, what are some things that you could put into place that could make it automatic that you did what you said you were going to do? So maybe it's like every morning I put a notebook by my bed, I write down the top 3 things I'm going to do, and I do those things. And I don't go to bed until I do those things or something like that.
Right.
But I do think it's about repetition, it's about making it easy, and it's about talking about yourself and thinking about yourself as that person that you want to become and not that person that you're identifying with. So like what do you think that a person who doesn't procrastinate would be doing right now? Or what do you think that that person would think when they wake up?
Oh, I like that.
You know what I mean?
So
What
get
would that
in their
person
mindset.
get in their mindset, live from that person.
Okay.
And at first you're just making it up.
Right.
At first you're just making it up, but eventually you start identifying, self-identifying with that person because you're doing the actions, you're performing the actions, you start to have the habits of that person. So it does take practice. And don't I am by no means an expert, but it is something I'm challenged with too, because think about it. Your identity is what creates your life.
Right.
When you look around at what you have, even down to the type of furniture that you have, where you go out to eat or what you cook for dinner, the placemat that you have on your dining room table, everything that you see that you have brought into your life is due to what you think is possible for you.
That's so true. That
Yeah.
is so true.
Yeah,
And
but it's a constant thing.
it
It's a
is.
constant.
It's something that you just have to learn. It's kind of about, I've spent so much time on, you know, trying to focus on abundance rather
Mhm.
than lack.
Yes.
And I totally get the concept. If you focus on lack, which most of us tend to do,
It's true.
that you will continue to see lack.
Yes.
And if you can switch it to abundance, then you will find you will be coming into more.
Yes.
And
Absolutely.
it's just a
But
matter of keeping up with it, I guess, because our brain is just wired to go back to the same old thoughts, right?
yeah. Yeah, our brains are stuck in what we see. So what we see in the physical world is what our brain is telling us that's what's real. We're not taught to use, so we have they call them your mental faculties, right? So you have reasoning and you have your imagination and you have all these other faculties which you have at your disposal that you can use, but we use just our sight and our senses to experience what's here. But what if you could, what I was talking about before in terms of identity, what if you could imagine that you were that person? Like
Right.
think about when you were a kid and how you used to play imagination
Play
and
pretend.
you play pretend, right? And you were really that person. Like you were really that princess or
Yes.
you were really that queen or that mermaid or
Oh, I
whatever it is
had
that you
those high
desire.
heels on.
Oh, see? But you were really it, right? You
Yes.
were walking in those high heels. Like that's what we have to tap into. And it is easier said than done. But I think it's catching yourself when you're too far into what you're presently seeing and then immediately thinking, what do I want to create rather than what am I seeing? And then
Okay.
shifting that focus. But it's definitely a challenge, especially because most of us aren't raised like that, especially Gen Xer.
Okay, I'm so sorry to say that this time has gone so quickly, but I wanted to make sure, how do people get in touch with you to find out more about what you do?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you again for having me,
Oh, it was a
Wendy. I
blast.
could chat with you forever and a day. So, yes, you can go to my website, which is joyfuldreamlife.com.
Oh, I love it.
Joyfuldreamlife.com. Yeah. And I thought it was very aspirational. When you go to the website, you can get a free gift. So just click on freebie for your free gift. You can listen to my podcast, The Gen X Career Show, and you can find out more about everything I do. Joyfuldreamlife.com.
Oh, I love that so much. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Oh, thanks again for having me, Wendy. Have a
All
great
right.
day.
You too. And thank you for listening. Go out there and be badass this week. You know, I am always cheering you on.